So about learning sign language, I'm a great advocate in people having a go at learning sign language. I know it's a big ask for families to find the time, find family to work out how you do that. It's a hard thing to do, but I really strongly recommend and suggest that you can have a go at learning sign language, whether you're a parent or whether you're a professional or whether you're a medico or a nurse or whoever. Learning another language is a really good thing, and sign language is another language. In Australia, it's called Auslan, Australian Sign Language. In other countries, it has another name. So if you're going to learn your country's sign language, then that would be the one you would try to adopt. Sean's family, they chose to learn sign language very early, and so they did a range of strategies to acquire sign language. And because Sean was being immersed in sign language, he had sign language surrounding him, he became fluent. So it's really not about going off and having a 1 hour class once a week. It's about probably somebody coming to your place to provide the sign language so that the child, the family, the siblings are involved in the learning process of sign language. Now, to find ways of doing this, using teachers of the deaf who are fluent in sign language is a good strategy. So it would be finding your school for the local school for the deaf and finding who is fluent in sign language, and would they like to come and give you lessons and give some home support, home tuition, home tutoring. There are signing dictionaries available. I don't know in every country, but I certainly know there is in Australia. There are DVDs which involve teaching sign language. Members of the deaf community, people who are deaf, could be a great resource because it pushes you to then have to understand their world. So it might be uncomfortable, it might be stressful, but you are then entering the world of people who are deaf. So there's a great learning curve in giving that a go. Seeking out coders. Now, CODA, C-O-D-A, that's a child of deaf adults. So that's a child who is born hearing to parents who are deaf, who are probably sign language users. So they are fluent in sign language because they grow up with it, like I talked about, immersion. They grow up with it around them. So they're a terrific resource to have somebody who is fluent in sign language. And the beauty is that for you, who are a speaker and a listener, you can ask questions without having to be a fluent sign language person. So it has a double bonus. You can attend classes and courses in sign language. They're offered all over the place. There are families who attend deaf community events, which might be a weekend away, or it might be a picnic, then you are again engaging in the world of the deaf community and having to manage your communication with them in their environment. You never know too, there could be a friend or a neighbour or a friend of a friend who is fluent in sign language. So ask around, you never know. Here, by the street where we live, we found a person who just lived up the street and we didn't know she was fluent in sign language. So you never know where that could be. And that person turned out to be assigning support for a child who was in a preschool. Another good strategy is to have voice-off times where you don't talk. So as a family, you might choose to have Wednesday night as no talking. So we're going to use all visual language. We're going to get the meal prepared and we're going to talk about the day, but it's all going to be in visual language. It's going to be in whatever sign language you have, and you may have to resort to drawing, you might have to resort to writing notes, whatever. It's all going to be a way of communicating without talking. And that's and it's fun. It's a great thing to do. At a preschool, one of the strategies I had was that one of the tables in the preschool was a no talking table. You had to get all your messages across to each other, the kids to each other, without using voice. So they had to do visual language at that table. The other tables were talking tables, but one was a voice-off table. In Australia, we also have an app which is Teachers Auslan, which has a whole range of hundreds of signs available to you, and that is available from the Royal Institute for Deaf and Blind Children in New South Wales, Australia, and it's called the Auslan Tutor. So that's an app that's really useful and you're not carrying around a big dictionary, easy to use on a tram or a train or whatever, just to look up signs. So nice little way to teach yourself how to do it. So the word, they demonstrate the word with a little video, then the word gets put into a little sentence, Auslan sentence, and then another in a bigger sentence. So you get 3 ways of it being represented, which also helps you to understand the structure of Auslan, which is not the same as English. Sign language has its own structure, and that's another way of getting, you have to get your head around as to what is the structure of the sign language. Okay, that's a lot of information. I'm up to take-home messages. I just wanted to cover cover what we've been talking about. The main thing is that our communication for the kids has to be meaningful. It has to make sense. So if we're using something that is not going meaningful to the child, then it's not going to be helpful in any way. So it is working out what is meaningful for the child, and then using that language to help the kid understand the world, their world. So it might be initially just simple gestures. It might be just a simple picture. Whatever works, you need to explore that and find out what does work, and then use that language and use it as your base to expand the language from there. So I prefer multimodal communication, as I've talked about. So I think that's certainly what a take-home message from it would be from me, is to engage in multimodal communication. You need to be alert to communication attempts too from the child. So that can be very subtle sometimes. So you need to become a really good observer of what's going on. So for the kid in hospital, it might be communicating pain. It could be communicating confusion, distress, or can be communicating pleasure. I really like that, I enjoyed that. So it is cashing in on those communication attempts, noticing them, and then responding accordingly. In the Heiko video, you saw Heiko following the child. That's, in the early years, is really important, to be led by the child in anything you do. So following the child in play and in exploration, and following whatever communication attempts they're making is a really good strategy. A lot of adults want to take the control and do, follow me, show me what you do. Well, in the third video, you saw Heiko doing that because Jonas has got older and was more capable of following directions and following the game. But in the early years, it's best to follow the child. The other thing I mentioned too is immersion. So when you're immersing the child in a communication system, such as sign language, gesture, facial expression, body language, so using that as a communication method, surrounding the child all the time is important. That's how we all learned our language when we were growing up, because we were immersed in the communication of the home, which was spoken English for me. And so that's how we learned it. We weren't taught it. We got it because we were immersed in that. So it's the same for acquiring a new language like Auslan, or whether it be French or Spanish, same deal. Immersion is a better process of learning. A lot of the kids too develop passions. The word I use for passions is, some people would call it obsessive, but I prefer passions. So these passions can be really useful in teaching and developing language and gaining cognitive skills through using this huge interest that the child might have. So noticing the passion and then cashing in on that passion. So they vary enormously from kid to kid. We all actually have our own passions. So we love it when somebody wants to engage us in the passion, whether it be music or whether it be sport, so we're all in that same boat. So it's the same for the kids. They do have passions and they are most interested in that. And so that's a good way to make other learning take place. I talk to educators, teachers, about using the passion as for educational outcomes. Sometimes they talk, oh, well, it's overriding, it's too much going on, no, it's too much, too obsessed by that. No, use the passion to take the child from there to there. Take advantage of it. And the other thing is rewarding. Use rewards, and you develop a range of rewards. So it's not just good work, it could be yes, or it could be, oh, yeah, wow, wonderful, whatever it is, because you want to get positive outcomes. So that's another way of getting to that point where you have a good outcome for the child.